Also, we've set up a website for our American President series where you can view programs as well as read and listen to personal letters from the presidents. You can visit us at americanpresidents.org. Now from Belgrade, Yugoslavia, state-run Serbian TV news on day 37 of NATO airstrikes on Yugoslavia. This portion was recorded yesterday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern and translated here at C-SPAN in Washington, D.C. It's about a half hour.
You are watching the evening news of Radio Television Serbia. President of the Republic, Slobodan Milošević, held a meeting today with the highest officials in the country in which they analyzed the course of the process for political settlement of the problem in Kosovo and Metohija. Informing on the results of his meeting with Albanian leader Dr. Ibrahim Rugova, President of Serbia Milan Milutinović stated that the achieved level of agreement concerning the most important issues of the political settlement of Kosovo and Metohija was encouraging, and especially the fact that emphasis was given to the increase in mutual trust and cooperation between Serbs and Albanians. President Milošević stated that joint principles that were signed yesterday in Pristina by President of Serbia Milan Milutinović and Albanian leader Dr. Ibrahim Rugova represent a first joint victory of Serbs and Albanians in their struggle for peace. Regardless of the war, our duty is to try to achieve mutual trust and peace that need to provide equal and dignified life to all citizens of Kosovo and Metohija. Agreement on that, expressed in yesterday's statement, represents an essence of a political settlement which will be based on equality of citizens and all ethnic communities. Any political settlement will be based on coexistence of Albanians, Serbs, Gypsies, Turks, and all residents of Kosovo. All of those in the world who wish to help in finding political settlement in Kosovo have a chance to support this process that has been commenced and to speak out against the aggression against Yugoslavia. That would remove the greatest obstacle to a peace settlement. It was also agreed that only political settlement can bring long-term peace and stability, which is in a joint interest of all citizens of Yugoslavia. All leading international press agencies devoted a great deal of attention to the joint statement signed yesterday by Milutinović and Dr. Rugova. Even Western media could not overlook the fact that Rugova signed this joint statement, who insisted, as we are being told, on renewing mutual trust, creation of new institutions in Kosovo, and stopping aggression on Yugoslavia. Leading Chinese media devoted a great deal of attention to the meeting between Milutinović and Dr. Rugova and their joint statement. Chinese daily Zhenmin Zhibao reported on all the leading principles of the joint statement, saying that a document proposing peaceful solution in Kosovo has been signed. Greek daily Exousia considers the dialogue between Milošević and Rugova to be another sign of Belgrade's willingness to remove the tension in the region and achieve final agreement on Kosovo issue. Leading TV channels broadcast the footage from the meeting as well as the statements of Milutinović and Dr. Rugova, reporting that the Serbs and Albanians have reached an agreement on resolving Kosovo crisis. Bill Clinton and NATO leaders could soon be held accountable for the three international crimes they committed in Yugoslavia. The first one, aggressive war against a sovereign country. Second, genocide on people of Yugoslavia. And third, environmental catastrophe threatening not only Yugoslavia but the whole region. This was also reported by Athens Daily Ethnos based on the analysis prepared by 20 members of the Judicial Council of Greece headed by Mikhails Dekleris. This very reputable institution proves that NATO aggression against Yugoslavia in a most brutal way violated UN Charter and a number of international documents. Bulgarian dailies Monitor and Truth report that Kosovo is about to be granted a broad self self-governing rule in which all residents will have an equal status. It was also stated that Ibrahim Rugova is the only leader of Kosovo Albanians who refused to leave Kosovo in order to find a political settlement to the conflict directly with the Serbian government. New meeting between Milutinovic and Dr. Rugova in Pristina was interpreted by Italian news agency ANSA as an attempt to find political solution for crisis in Kosovo. Media in NATO countries are conspicuously silent about the meeting because it rubs against their interests. This demonstrates their intention to brush aside any peace initiatives and attempts to find a political solution to the crisis in Kosovo. With respect to NATO attempt on April 22nd to assassinate the president of Yugoslavia by bombing his residence, which represents an unprecedented organized terrorist attack, Federal Ministry of Foreign Affairs stated that that represents one of the gravest crimes based on the Convention on Prevention and Punishment of Crimes Against Individuals under international protection, including diplomatic representatives. This international convention was adopted by United Nations General Assembly on December 14, 1973, and it clearly defines as a crime any attack against a head of state or his officers or residents. A threat to commit such an act is also defined as a crime. The duties of countries which signed the convention are also clear. Yugoslavia is a signatory to this convention, and so are almost all of NATO countries, including United States. They have an obligation to cooperate in preventing these crimes. Federal Republic of Yugoslavia will ask United Nations Secretary General to bring an action against suspects so that they are held liable for the crime they committed. Also, domestic legislation in the countries participating in the aggression provides for criminal liability for those who organized and implemented this crime. Chairman of Serbian Parliament Dragan Tomic met with a delegation from Republika Srpska led by the chairman of the Parliament of Republika Srpska, Petar Jokic. Tomic said that at this time great efforts are being invested into overcoming the crisis and preserving the industrial infrastructure, which are the precondition for normal life. Economic cooperation was also discussed. Aggressor last night once again targeted civilian facilities, bridges, railways. Air Defense of Yugoslavia shot down several enemy missiles. More than 5 people died and tens were injured in the largest NATO attack on a gypsy neighborhood in Prizren. Based on the information of witnesses, around 11:10 from Macedonia, an enemy plane came and was flying over Prizren. It destroyed tens of residential houses. All of the residents of Podrinska Street became homeless in this criminal attack. 2 children were killed, as well as a pregnant woman. NATO aggressor, after destroying part of the highway yesterday, today around 12:30, targeted the old bridge in Biljanovic. By destroying this bridge, the traffic between Kraljevo and Raška is interrupted. During night, at around 3:15, NATO aggressor for the 4th time bombed Beška Bridge over Danube. This bridge is 2,100 meters long, and for 22 years it has connected 2 banks of Danube. NATO missiles have put out of service this bridge as well. In a destructive rage of NATO criminals, around 1:20 this morning, missiles landed on downtown Ruma. The residential houses were severely damaged. Neighbors and residents are helping in repairing the buildings. One person was killed and 3 were injured in attack on Podgorica in the neighborhood of Tuzi. NATO attacked Podgorica once again last night. A large number of cluster bombs landed in Zeta. Some of them did not explode. NATO alliance also bombed Sutomor and Danilovgrad. Air defense of Yugoslav army was efficient. At 2:45, in 16th attack of NATO on Kuršumlija, railway bridge near Kosovnice on the highwai between Niš and Pristina was targeted again. The huge damage was sustained. Criminal attack of NATO on Požarevac last night resulted in damage to residential houses, shops, and offices. The windows were broken, the roofs were damaged, as were doors and windows. The buildings around the area that was bombed were damaged, and so were the cars on the parking lot. Last night, NATO criminals bombed a huge metal processing plant near Glogovac, 30 kilometers west of Pristina. It completely destroyed an administrative building and workshops where 3,000 employees worked, mostly Albanians. An hour later, 5 missiles were launched on this industrial plant. NATO also bombed Pristina and surrounding areas last night, as well as the village of Batlava. For the umpteenth time, they bombed civilian airport in Slatina, while 4 missiles landed in the villages of Glavnik, Lužani. 6 missiles landed on the village of Lebane, on the highway towards Niš. In last night's attack of NATO, a new bridge over Sava in Ostružnica was destroyed. This bridge was to become a new detour route around Belgrade, and it was to connect Ostružnica and Dobanovci. What time did you hear the detonation? Between 2 and 3 o'clock this morning. The bridge over Sava in Ostružnica is 1,500 meters long. Last night at 1:50, NATO aviation launched many missiles on Sarajevo Bridge over Južna Morava at Grdelica. Lieutenant Colonel General Smiljanić stated that after 36 days of war, Yugoslav Air Force and Air Defense is still operational. In giving information on NATO attacks, Lieutenant Colonel General Smiljanić, commander of Air Force and Air Defense of Yugoslav Army, stated that NATO planes so far flew over 8,000 sorties, out of which 6,000 were combat sorties. They launched over 600 cruise missiles. From March 24th, NATO dropped on Yugoslavia 11,000 tons of explosive, which is over 1 kilogram per capita of Yugoslav citizens. On the targets, 220 times NATO attacked Air Force and Air Defense targets in over 100 locations, dropping 5,000 tons of explosives. NATO assessments were unrealistic and their plans flawed. General Smiljanić stated that Air Force and Air Defense maintained its operational capabilities after 30 days of war. All subsystems are still in order, which is confirmed by the results of combat. Air Defense shot down 24 enemy planes, out of which 2 were stealth F-117 planes, 2 helicopters, 2 unmanned crafts, and 30 cruise missiles. In addition to that, Air Force and Air Defense implemented all tasks in Air Force support of the Yugoslav Army. The level of adaptability of Air Force and its ability to quickly repair its facilities will certainly serve as an example for future. Resilience and adaptability of Air Force in combat is something that even NATO aggressors have acknowledged. diminished. Members of Air Force and Air Defense of Yugoslav Army know what they are defending, and they are determined to continue until the very end. Aggressor is mistaken in believing that further criminal killing and destruction will diminish our morale. Day after day, we grow stronger and more united. In preserving our combat equipment and high morale, members of Air Force and Air Defense have no doubt that they will be able to achieve the ultimate goals, which are defense of our country's freedom and independence. General Smiljanic stated unlimited support to military and state leadership and added that Air Force and Air Defense shall complete its tasks in defending the homeland. Last night at 1:55, aggressors of NATO aviation launched several missiles on Sarajevo Bridge in Yuzhna Morava at Grdelica. Detonations were so strong that they were heard in Leskovac as well. On this spot, on April 12th, NATO murderers killed 50 civilians and passenger train. Due to a strong detonation, many houses were damaged in the area. Deputy Prime Minister of Serbia, Dragan Tomic, and Assistant Foreign Affairs Minister Nebojša Vujovic visited Surdulica last night. Over 70 journalists, foreign and domestic, accompanied them, where they could see for themselves this immense crime against civilian population. During another air raid today, residents of Surdulica bid farewell to 9 of their citizens killed in NATO bombing on April 27th. The city of Surdulica bid farewell to all 5 members of Milic family: Spomenka, Alexander, Vesna, Miljan, and Vladimir. Among the victims were also 17-year-old Miodrag Milovanovic and Staniša Đorđević. Commander of 3rd Army, Colonel General Nebojša Pavković, stated that an attack on civilian facilities in Surdulica is an embarrassment for NATO. General Pavković also stated that in this attack against civilians, NATO demonstrated it had no military honor. General Pavković visited today Surdulica, which during murderous NATO attacks sustained significant human losses and damage. As a peaceful and pretty town in Serbia, Surdulica has no relevance for military activity, and this is why what NATO did to this town is an embarrassment for their army. Look what Surdulica looks like after the destruction on April 27th at noon. Silence says everything. It is hard to believe one's own eyes. And this is why we shall only give you facts. In one day, in one moment, NATO killed in Surdulica 11 children. We don't have a final number of fatalities at this point. 16 bodies were found so far. Tens of houses were destroyed completely, while 300 houses were rendered unusable. This woman's brief story says it all. We did nothing. We have not done anything to them. Why did they have to shoot civilian house? I have built this house for 10 years. I have lived in it only for 1 year, and I managed to survive this by leaving the house for 3 minutes. Just look at this crib. Did they think that a military target was hiding in it? Will this pretty drawing ever find a child who drew it? Who will use these textbooks now? Once beautiful homes now look like this. However, people are not giving up. They're beginning to repair and rebuild. There are many sad sides of this kind. Perhaps these sad sides are an illustration of U.S. fight for human rights. It is to be hoped that foreign journalists will let the world know about criminal consequences of attack against our country. Deputy Prime Minister of Serbia, Dragan Tomic, and Assistant Minister of Foreign Affairs, Nebojša Vujovic, spoke to journalists in Surdulica. If you wish to report the truth, if you wish what we wish every day, which is for bombing to stop as soon as possible, tomorrow if possible, if these reports are truly realistic, then citizens of your countries will not allow the bombing to continue in this city nor in any other city. This is an attack against civilians. Look at the number of fatalities: children, women, elderly. This is a sufficient evidence of the level of civilization and culture of the countries that are attacking us. I'm convinced that if you show this footage, then in all of your cities tomorrow, people will start demonstrating against bombing. Serbs, Bulgarians, Gypsies live in this area. This is a multi-ethnic city. An attack against these people as a part of military psychological war, an attempt to intimidate our people, is aimed at diminishing the resolve of our nation to resist aggression. We shall use all means to defend ourselves from aggression, but at the same time we shall just as passionately seek political settlement of the crisis in Kosovo. Today, 3 more bodies were identified of those who were killed last Friday in the bombing of Radio Television of Serbia building in Belgrade. They were working at the time of the attack. The bodies of the following were identified: Darko Stojmenovski, born in 1973, a technician in the production department. The funeral of Darko Stojmenovski will be held tomorrow. Ksenia Bankovic, born in 1971, a video editor in the production unit. Ksenia Bankovic will be buried on Saturday in Belgrade. Tomislav Mitrovic, born in 1938, TV director in Radio Television Serbia. The information on Mr. Mitrovic's funeral shall be announced at a later time. Chairman of Pan-Chinese Association of Journalists, Shao Huaza, sent a letter to the Association of Journalists of Serbia condemning the bombing of the television building in Serbia and other media in Yugoslavia. Chinese journalists send their best regards to Yugoslav journalists, whom they admire for truthfully informing about the aggression against Yugoslavia. Chinese journalists plan to visit the Association of Journalists of Serbia as well as the sites of destruction in Yugoslavia. Foreign participants of the International Roundtable Europe at Crossroads, 22 of those participants, who represent 13 countries, among them Austria, Bulgaria, Finland, Great Britain, Greece, Israel, Italy, Japan, Russia, held a press conference and also visited the sites destroyed by NATO. In the press conference, they appealed to the international community to stop this aggression. By targeting the symbol of New Belgrade, NATO shot not only the office building but also media headquartered in this building. International experts agree that this is the first time in history that an aggressor targeted free speech. Participants of the International Roundtable Europe at Crossroads visited heating plant in New Belgrade, one of the largest in the Balkans, which provides heat for 1 million residents of Belgrade. After NATO bombing, this heating plant has been 100% destroyed. Professor John Burns from Oxford University, we would like to hear your comments on what you saw in Belgrade. I would like to say that those of my countrymen who experienced bombing during the war could perhaps describe how it looks like. I feel rage on your behalf. Sir Alfred Sherman, journalist from London, was also asked to describe his impressions. As far as the attack of United States, Germany, and Europe is concerned against the sovereign country, I can say as a journalist that this is an unprecedented attack performed by democratic countries. This was a direct hit. At the time of the hit, people were in the building working. We urge for this new imperialism to be stopped, and we urge the world to return to moral principles before an irreversible moral and physical damage has been caused. This was stated in a statement signed by 22 renowned experts from 13 countries. Foreign experts are shocked by the destruction and aura caused by NATO alliance led by Germany and United States and other countries. We cannot accept that children, women and men are being killed in the name of peace and that vital industrial facilities are being destroyed. NATO's credibility cannot be preserved by spilling Serbian blood. This is a violation of Versailles Agreement and all other agreements, peace agreements signed after Second World War. Sir Alfred Sherman from London stated that aggression against Serbs has been prepared 10 years ago with an aim to put our country under the German-U.S. hegemony control. Natalia Narochnicka from Moscow stated that NATO wishes to occupy Kosovo and politically, economically subdue Europe. Wolfgang Albrecht from Germany stated that it will be terrible if NATO succeeded because then most European countries would be placed under semi-colonial regime. Tetsuya Sahara from Japan stated that America works based on the principle divide and rule, wishing to impose American values on the people in the Balkans instead of leaving them alone and respecting their tradition, cultural and other values. Delegation of Federal Parliament, led by Ljubiša Ristić, completed its visit to Strasbourg. European legislators visited in Strasbourg, where they met with the representatives of European Parliament and participated in their debate on Kosovo and NATO aggression. Delegation of Federal Parliament of Yugoslavia, led by Ljubiša Ristić, completed its visit to the European Parliament in Strasbourg. Throughout 2 days, our delegation, which also included Milan Božić, informed the officials of European Parliament on true nature and consequences of NATO aggression against our country. United European Left was most understanding and ready to support Yugoslav delegation. Yugoslav delegation came to Strasbourg on the invitation of the United European Left. Ljubiša Ristić warned that NATO was not waging war for human rights, but in order to conquer the territory. NATO aggression caused victims among civilians of all ethnic backgrounds. Milan Božić spoke about the environmental threat, which can also endanger other European countries. The greatest support to our delegation was given by Gennady Zyuganov, President of the Communist Party of Russia, Boris Olenik, Chief of Ukrainian delegation, as well as delegates from Greece, Italy, Cyprus, and other countries. Russia needs to provide all kinds of assistance to Yugoslav people, from humanitarian to military and technical. Recently in Cyprus, with 17 other leaders of left political parties, we agreed to form a broad front of support for Yugoslavia. Protests in our countries will keep growing. The best message sent to NATO was hands off Yugoslavia. We shall continue this effort, and we must convince the rest of the world that our policy has to be directed toward finding responsible solutions. We hope to expand the front for political and peaceful settlement of this crisis in European Parliament. Many people here are misled by television. I wouldn't even call that television. They are waging psychological and propaganda war in order to force people to vote for the war and barbarian solutions. However, I hope that truth will triumph because Europe must be free of war. However, despite the support of United European Left, European Parliament, after debate in which the main speaker was from Albania, adopted resolution on aggression against Yugoslavia and humanitarian crisis in Kosovo. It was stated in the resolution that NATO has not achieved its aim, and this is why the continued aggression against Yugoslavia must go on. However, the visit of our delegation spoiled the triumph of NATO spokesman because the officials had an opportunity to hear from our delegation the real truth about the situation in Yugoslavia. Federal Republic of Yugoslavia has accepted the mandatory jurisdiction of International Court of Justice based on the declarations sent to Secretary General of UN on April 26. Based on reciprocity, Yugoslavia has accepted mandatory jurisdiction of this highest judicial institution of United Nations. Territorial disputes, as well as those that fall under internal responsibilities, are excluded from this jurisdiction. Thus, Yugoslavia can commence an action at International Court of Justice against NATO countries who, in committing aggression against Yugoslavia, violated UN Charter and basic principles of international law. Yugoslavia filed a claim against NATO countries participating in aggression, requesting that temporary measures be imposed on the grounds of violation of the international obligation to refrain from using force against another country, obligation not to interfere in internal matters of another country, violation of sovereignty, violation of the obligation to protect civilians, obligation not to use banned arms, obligation to provide free sailing and free airspace, and violating basic rights and freedoms, and threatening physical destruction of Yugoslav people. Yugoslavia has also requested that International Court of Justice issue a decree on immediate cessation of stopping of Yugoslavia. Throughout the world, protests against aggression on Yugoslavia are being held. In addition to our citizens, their friends also participate in these protests, expressing deep respect for Yugoslavia. Several hundred of citizens of Thessaloniki in Greece blocked the railway station where the military train with NATO tanks and 300 German soldiers was stationed. NATO murderers leave the Balkans, NATO murderers go home were the slogans that residents of Thessaloniki addressed to NATO. The power center of Yugoslavia are not buildings but people who are determined to defend their country. This is a message of our people from Baden-Württemberg who meet almost daily to protest in Germany against NATO aggression against Yugoslavia. In a main square in Stuttgart, our young residents are lighting candles to Western democracy, which is now killing a peaceful nation. Every week, the demonstrations are being organized in Stuttgart with about 6,000 of our citizens, together with Greek, Italian, German citizens, local and public officials, legislators, journalists. Another protest meeting is scheduled for May 2nd. This is a footage that we received from our viewers in Canada from one of the numerous protests against aggression in Yugoslavia, which was held in April in this North American country. Among the protesters were mostly young people who wished to bring to the attention of media incomprehensible attitude of NATO countries who are bombing their relatives in Yugoslavia. Slogans condemned the leading role of the United States in the killing mission against civilians and civilian facilities in Yugoslavia. NATO aggression against Yugoslavia destroys the economy and culture of the country, where foreign intervention only deepens the gap between Serbs and Albanians. This was heard on the protests in Vancouver. The demonstrators also announced that they would continue the protest, and they also called Serbs throughout the world to demonstrate their opposition in the countries where they live and to protest as long as the aggression is going on.